this meeting of the Monroe County Stormwater Management Board on January 9th, 2020 at 3 p.m. And our first item is approval of minutes, which
I move approval of the minutes from our December 2019 meeting.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes for December 12th, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And new business, the stormwater expenditure report for December.
If I can keep up the screen with me. Okay. As we go through, some of these, they're about the same dollars every month, so I'm not going to go through them too detailed. There's labor and fringes, seed, mulch, and pipe. Looks like we had a slower month in December. Repairs, that's just monthly maintenance and stuff. Travel training. We're getting Connie through some training and getting her certified for erosion control, get her certifications there. On-call contracting services, again, that's flaggers that we use to get a little more done rather than send our guys out there holding flags. Remote monitoring, that's the Fieldstone sluice gates. We had a electrical circuit or panel or something go out, and that 1100 is to replace that. A modem, obviously. Professional fees. We didn't get very many invoices through December, and I attribute that to the holidays. I can't imagine a consulting firm not getting their invoices out, but that's what it appears to me. Public education. Connie is putting together some things that she's wanting to put together for school kids to try to improve awareness there. She's got, I don't know what, several little trinket type things that reinforce stormwater and managing it well. Gas, oil, lube is nothing strange. Going down into Mount Tabor, the 37 is, that covers their pre-design conference, or the preliminary design, topo, and right-of-way, so they're proceeding with that. We had a good meeting with him, and we're able to determine the best alternative to move forward there. Baby Creek, that's proceeding. We're moving in 75%. Submission was just made. We've got some edits to do there, and they're working toward 90% and finishing it up. Stipp and Moores Creek, it's pretty well designed. I think we built it at 83%. We ended up having to go back and do some environmental assessment that the Corps said they were wanting to do originally. So that's dragging out now because it was handed back to us, that permitting. Cherry Lane, that's been put on hold until spring. If any of you read the papers, we hit a gas main out there when they just got started, and the gas company said they wouldn't be out there until this year early. So we had to just button things up until we get the gas main relocated. Truesdale is finished. If anybody's up off of Lost Man's Lane, I might suggest you go in and look at that culvert. I think our crew did a good job there. And Monroe County Garage, there's two things going on there. There's a building that is going through Toby, and I'm doing some best management practices in back of the salt barn, sand barn, to provide some filter for the salt mixes there. Salt's really difficult to separate, but it was brought to our attention at an audit back in 18 from IDEM, and we're working on moving ahead with that. I can tell you that we have it approved through IDEM, so I'm reviewing bid documents now, and it's moving ahead. So that's about all I've got going on there.
With the salt, is that leaching from stored salt, or
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
the salt problem at the garage? Is that leaching from stored salt, or
It's,
is
there's not
it-
as much as you would think. They've got, both buildings have concrete walls on, up to, I don't know, I'll guess 6 feet. It's high, and I'm sure those are all sealed with the floor. But just by the nature of them being in there with a front end loader and putting it in the trucks, and trucks traveling and are dragging it around, it needs to be monitored. And that whole activity area drains back to this BMP that I'm going to be building this summer, I hope.
Okay, and is there any public comment on the expenditure report? Any questions? All in favor of approving the monthly stormwater expenditure report for December 2019, please say aye. Aye. And our next item is ratification of the U.S. Department of Interior agreement.
And Dave gave me this and said we need to take this to the Stormwater Board for ratification, so that's what we need.
Do you know what the agreement is?
It's,
Yeah, go ahead.
we have an agreement with Friends of Lake Monroe, and we've committed,
Oh, okay.
I think, what, 70,000
Yeah.
over a period of time, and they've gone into have a 319 grant with USGS.
It's actually for logo permission to use on
Oh,
the
excuse me.
USGS site.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically, you guys had signed it back in December with Dave, and it's so that we're giving them permission to use our county logo on that
Okay.
partnering site.
Yeah, okay. I knew that we were working with them, I just didn't know we had anything going on with the Department of Interior.
Obviously, I didn't look at that one very closely, did
Is there any discussion, questions?
Just that I remember a couple different times that we talked about accidentally using our old logo. So I'm sure we're gonna get it. Do we have like one logo that we have decided on?
Yes.
Funny you say that. Because in December, I just received notification that I think, actually, I just sent some emblems to the commissioners to change out like even the highway trucks. So we are going, to my knowledge, to the bicentennial is our basic logo now for all the departments. So we're trying to work to get that out. So it will be that bicentennial logo for the county that will be used.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, Angie, if you're ever in need of it, Angie can supply it.
Oh, I've used the bicentennial.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like it. I thought it was real neat.
Yes.
We
Yeah,
don't
it
think
was.
that Blue's gonna work on the red trucks out there. So we sent Angie some modifications we met with the local graphic designer, and they gave us some actually some ideas, so I'm gonna go see her afterwards and see if she's had a chance to look at them, which one she wants to go with, and then to get all the county vehicles changed out.
Awesome. Great.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor of ratification of the U.S. Department of Interior agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
And that passes. Our next item is a memo summarizing stormwater efforts in 2019.
I introduced the idea of reviewing the stormwater fees. They've been in place since 2008, or I believe. And through that conversation, I was asked to just show what we're doing, and I try to identify shortcomings in stormwater, And this was my attempt to do that. I think we're in need of an inspector, and right now I would say in the stormwater management, we're just reacting and trying to keep our nose above water. If there's any specific elements in there, I'm happy to have a conversation about it, but a lot of it, as you read it, it was kind of getting into the weeds and the minutia of what we're doing. So I would say if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Is this a situation where an inspector could possibly be shared with planning?
I think that's more than a possibility. As I'm looking at an inspector from my little
Right.
window, and I can see that we need support to get out on the job sites. And as I showed you or mentioned, I could go back and do that, but it's kind of overpriced and it would take me off something else. We have a chronic issue in construction where it's just not monitored. And another function that person would do, in my mind, would be to help implement a plot plan approval process. Another chronic issue that I've seen since I've been here, that home and planning's involved with this too, where homes get built over setbacks, they encroach on something. And in my case, my hot button is that the home will go out and get built and it'll be too low and it creates a flooding situation. I've got a potential flooding situation. I've got one where I had to go out and modify a detention outlet structure because the people built a home with a sliding glass door and out of their basement, and they came in and started showing me pictures of water running in their basement where the detention basin got too high. Some of these things I scratch my head and say, how does the home get built there? And we have a project in Southern Meadows that's going through the Plan Commission. And one of the things I've asked for there is that each lot be required for an individual lot plot plan and have it certified by an engineer so that that would ensure me that they're putting the right information on the drawing and that it will get out there and get built in the right location and right elevation. And as part of that program, I've asked that they then provide as-built by the engineer. So I'm in hopes that will help and kind of send the direction that I think we ought to be going. So.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of hand in hand with planning, and it would make a lot of sense. And I know they're in need of more in the way of inspection. This might be a good way to.
I've had conversations with planning, and yeah, it would just be a coordinating efforts and try to fully use this person's time. I mean, critically thinking that we're in a good economy now. There's a lot of construction, but would the need be there in poor construction?
Yeah.
So it's in here for discussion for you guys to think about it.
Yeah. Thank you. Is there any public comment on this?
On that particular item, or?
Yes,
I had some other
I'm
issues.
sorry, about the memo summarizing stormwater.
Well, Terry and I were talking just briefly before we started the meeting. It's clear that there is need for additional staffing, and whether or not that could be staffed by sharing people with the county road department at different times of the seasons, different seasons, because I know you guys are all busy all the time anyway, but in terms of better utilization of people and in terms of equipment. And then also, if we were to hire more individuals, what that would do to the fees, and I would like to take it to the next step, because I don't see I understand that what it would cost. I appreciate that you laid that out, but I don't know where all the money would come from, or where you would propose bringing the money in from.
With your feedback, and I'll let you stew over for a month or so. I'll go to Lisa and talk with her and work toward what she thinks the need is through our conversations, and make a proposal back and bring some numbers into you on what I think it would take to provide that service. One of the things that I think is important, and I've asked her, is what kind of a level of service should stormwater be providing? Right now, we're behind, I don't know, close to 200 requests. Do we want to be able to respond to the request daily or within a 30-day window? And beyond that, do we want to develop a second crew so we can start working on a long-term maintenance plan? At this point, all we're doing is reacting to calls. So this is the direction, and I would look to Lisa for that.
I would like for us to be proactive rather than reactive all the time.
Absolutely
And we've
agree.
said, and we've talked numerous times of the direction of this portion of the department. Because when I came on, we had a two-man crew 4 years ago. We had probably over 250 requests. There had been no long-range plan projects taken over, and then that just keeps growing in this county. So since Terry's come on, he's done great. I know he sees retirement in his future, and we want to get some things moving before he eventually retires. What that direction is, do we both see that you need to increase the stormwater fee? I'd be lying if I sat here and I said no. I don't see any possible way of moving forward and running a good department, an efficient department, better portion of the department without raising that fee. If you compare it to what's around the state, we are extremely low. If you just add one person to our payroll at, say, a $40,000 salary, which is basically what they start out in a union, because it's a union shop. When you get their fringe benefits added in, you're talking a $60,000 cost, and then you're also having to provide them a dump truck or something, especially to where they can help the highway department in the winter for snow removal. We just added on 13 more miles of road this season from I-69. That's a whole new route for another person. We didn't add any new people. So you're looking at a $160,000 dump truck. So when you add one person, you're costing that budget that first year $210,000 up front. I think we've stretched the budget as far as we can stretch it. If we take one of the big long-range projects that we have, it'll deplete that budget. I don't want to deplete a budget. I haven't depleted a budget yet, and that would make me very nervous. One thing that we have discussed, we have the 4 or 5 projects that's on that list that you see that's anywhere from 50% to 90% complete. So now we get into what it costs to construct those projects, anywhere from probably $1 million to $4 million for each of those projects. We can throw them on the shelf and do nothing with them, which I'm not comfortable with, because I think that's a waste of having a project designed and then not being able to do anything with it, and then not saying one is not important than the other one. Because we chose those projects for a reason, and that was for safety reasons and property owners, and people can't get to their homes for 6 months. That's why the board chose to move forward out of that long-range plan. So to throw them on a shelf and say we can't afford it, to me is really not an answer. I think another area we would like to look at is bonding. We're going to put all the construction costs for all those projects together and see what it would cost to construct them, buy the right-of-way, and have those all completed. And maybe meet with, like, Greg Garitas, that does a lot of our financial bonding for other areas of the county. And talking to other government entities, this is the way they get stormwater projects done and the major infrastructure projects done. You can't just go with a $1 million budget and expect you're going to build a $4 million road. It's not going to happen. And plus all your overhead costs with running the crews in-house too, to do the everyday complaints that we get, which is continuous. So it's a lot to think about. It's something that I know Terry's toyed with a lot, that now that we're at this point, which direction do we go? So we would really like for you guys to think about and discuss which direction you guys want to go. You guys oversee the budget mainly. We kind of just help spend it. But we want to make the right decision for stormwater. If it's bonding, and I think that's a great idea. You could complete 4 or 5 great projects that have been on the books for umpteen years. But also, if you want to keep up with the daily things, and a new inspector, we've talked about this for probably 2 years, for an inspector in this county between planning and building and highway department. You can't do it with what the stormwater fee is today.
Could we raise some of that money through the permitting for the building?
It's always a possibility. We're not set up, we don't take any money in right now. We don't charge for anything. I know planning has the mechanisms to do that. I know we could set it up to do that. That it's an area that you can go to, but I guess you look at the bigger picture of how much is a permit, how long is it gonna take you to, what are you gonna get from that permit in a yearly basis versus a whole new position? But to me, you just have to kind of weigh all your options like that, so.
Let me throw something out. I would,
I didn't want to interrupt if you had something.
yes, I just want to make a comment on that. There are alternate ways of addressing the inspection system. We could do it with staff. We can contract it out to an independent company. That's what all the road jobs, the larger road jobs, they have a separate contract site inspector. We can look around and see if there's somebody interested in doing that, and that would have, obviously the unit price is going to be higher, but over a period of time, when we have a slow environment, then we wouldn't need it. We'd actually contract it out, and if we see that they're keeping them busy, we could weigh those fees that we'd pay to them and then make the decision whether or not to bring someone in. So there's a lot to think about.
I agree. There's probably a lot of different avenues that can be taken. I'm going to kind of unpack it just a little bit here. With maybe large construction projects and things like that, bonding and or increasing the fee might be an option, but I'm going to set that aside for a second. The inspector, I think, is a great approach, and there's a lot of need for inspection work being done both in planning, stormwater, I'd even imagine in highway occasionally, building, even in the health department probably, to make sure that they're putting the septic tank where we have recommended it to go. We have a soil scientist. We're one of 2 counties in the state that have them go out there and do a soil boring analysis prior to it, and then we advise them these are the sites that are chosen to put in a septic before they get their septic permit, and then that goes to planning, and then it's delineated on a plat. We're probably not 100% sure that they're putting it exactly where we're asking them to. Like Terry said, we're not sure if they're meeting setbacks or building it in a high point where it might prevent flooding when the construction process is going on. Planning, there's a number of reasons why. Even in my office, I have trying to ramp up some of the inspections with section corners, because that goes into a development project too, to make sure when they're out there, they're, finding these monuments, and, since it's a state profession, they don't necessarily have to establish the same control that we're trying to create here to do the Perpetuation Act that the state had set forth. Unfortunately, we have to pretty much do that process in-house to establish better control, put geodetic controls on there, so it makes it more permanent. So there's a lot of need for this across the board. So to your question about maybe increasing certain applications, maybe you could do it in a number of different ways, permits from building, planning, stormwater, and health, to maybe try to help with some of the cost of having an inspector. I know no one's going to be too excited about increasing a permit for our constituents, neither am I. And then there's not just the cost of the some of the equipment that was mentioned that definitely needs to be thought through as we're looking at this, but I think the accuracy component to this, we need to have precision measurements. And with that, you have to be under the responsible charge of a professional surveyor. So even with that said, if they're siloed into certain departments, they might not have that ability to give us that accuracy that we need. And the reason why we have an inspector out there to get elevation and things of that nature. So I think there's a lot of need for this across the board and a lot of different avenues we can take. And then you're looking at the surveying equipment, which could easily cost another $100,000 if you're buying that all separately, or if you wanted to kind of have a one-team person to go out there and do a pre-construction survey with like a Faro, which is a new technology that basically will produce an as-built for you, so you know that they're putting these inlets and sewer drains in the right places, or they're putting these foundations in the right places for planning. All those things are needed, and I think we need to have a more thorough conversation of where every particular need is and evaluate that. And if stormwater has enough need present where they need their own inspector, I think that's fine. We need to see if that's the case. But again, it circles back to how are they going to be under the responsible charge of a surveyor to produce the accuracy that we need. You know, we don't want to just be like, oh, it looks good, and do map spotting. I mean, we potentially could for some elements, but some of it you really want that precision measurement. That could even help in other areas with identifying karst features and things like that. You have to be a engineer or a surveyor to identify those. Licensed surveyor, not the county surveyor. And all of those things are critical to move forward with our development and our stormwater needs in this county.
I would think too that if we had a qualified, good inspector, that would reduce some of the future needs for these crises that keep coming up, because things were not done correctly.
And we have to be realistic that as population grows and there is more and more and more development, more roads needed, it just does mean that we've got to put more money into these kinds of things. So, you know, personally, my personal feeling is that I'm not set in stone. I don't so much favor permits and fees being increased, because that can be a burden that keeps people from doing things that maybe are important. And certainly government used to run without endless fees, permits, grants, all of that stuff. I would rather see it be, I know it's not popular, but I would rather people actually work together to pay for these things, which means taxes.
Yes, and so that's just kind of my take on it, that there is a present today need for a position like this. I'm not certain if stormwater would be the best place to take it from. I'm not certain exactly how you would want to craft a job description in the effect where it could be more collaborative amongst the departments that are all affected by this. And then kind of back to the bond and the fee, I'm going to really kind of sit back here and continue to listen to the experts. I know it's not a popular discussion to talk about raising a service fee, but if that allows us to maybe bring in an inspector, that might prevent some large projects in the future, or some setbacks that are going to cost money, then it might be well worth it. Cost savings is something that's not so quantified all the time. They usually are looking at return of investment, but right here I think is a cost savings approach. And that's where I am. I want to thank you. I read this. I felt like your voice sometimes popped off the page as I was reading it. And I like the way that you want to prioritize things and everything. It looks really good. And those are kind of my comments I have. And we do have a professional surveyor, or currently job description opening in the surveyor's office. We have a part-time PS as we're going through the transition, so let's keep that in mind where we can utilize some of the existing staff and really create a collaborative, cohesive way of moving forward to addressing these needs. If we're addressing all these needs, I guarantee it, the person wouldn't have any downtime. They probably would need an assistant. But those are my comments. That impacts a lot of this office, this board's role, my office, and the roles I play, and definitely your office as our county commissioners. Thank you.
One thing that I guess that what I was kind of wondering about is, could there be, I don't want to say an inspection department, but is it possible that inspectors could be cross-trained in all of these different areas, or are they too specialized?
You currently have inspectors in the building department,
Right.
okay? That's specialized.
That is specialized.
And an inspector could go out and do, one person would be a qualified person on site development would be, they would have the expertise to just look at the whole site and monitor as it goes on.
Yeah.
Just as a building, there's certain steps on that development that need to be looked at.
Uh-huh.
And
Right. Yeah. That
with some training, even with some training, you could get a person that's on the ball. You could get them to do it with a little bit of training.
Or maybe just be able to identify things that should be pointed out to another inspector. I mean, if a planning inspector goes out and sees that planning stuff is pretty much okay, but a stormwater problem is looking like it might happen, they could then point it out to the stormwater inspector and maybe cover more ground that way.
They just go out when it's grading? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
I would suggest that one inspector, whatever he sees out there, he would just go back to that department and point out an
Yeah.
encroachment to planning or a grading issue to
Yeah.
our department, or storm sewers. That's my key. You know, if there's a storm sewer that's not going over to that manhole when it's supposed to be, you just you address it real quick.
Yeah.
The troubling thing is, without us being out there, these things are not caught until they're way beyond
Right, yeah.
that issue, and then it's hard to say, repair that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's a way that you could cover more territory, basically, or at
Mhm.
least be looking at it and seeing. But anyhow,
I just wanted to add to your question. I absolutely think that could be built into a one-person role as long as the workload wasn't too much. I think they all go hand in hand. And as you're going through the development process with planning and the inspection phase with Terry, that these things could be prioritized, and then you could have the inspector to go out. I think it would just be like a checklist of things that they're looking for, and they just do that on every site that goes through the county process. And outside of certain things with accuracy, that is a governed profession, and they may have to carry certain certifications, but outside of that, I think they could actually gain the institutional knowledge and skill sets on the job to do a cohesive inspection that could help assist all those departments.
I guess I'm not quite sure how to put it. If you have anything to
Well,
say,
yeah,
let
yeah,
me
I
think
was-
about this for a minute.
I'd like to take this ask you to take this to the next step, to give us numbers, so that we can talk about what that might realistically look like to do A, B, C, D, and how much of an increase we'd be talking about. The other slight thing I wanted to throw in is that the county does like an internal trail group where we sit down and talk about things across departments. I can see us doing an inspection group that would cross departments to make some of this work.
And we do, between planning and highway, we have a monthly department coordination meeting.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of this discussion originated back when Jason Aiken was here, for the need of this position. So that is one of the topics that we've discussed amongst all of us, that it's definitely a need. So, and I think, and we also have the group that, for the permitting software, that and that's building and planning and highway, surveyor, GIS, and the health department. I think that's all but that, if you can bring that together and you get that program, I think that's gonna help a lot also with the department coordination and not missing things that maybe have been missed over the years. And then I think that can make that inspector's job a lot easier, that he has one portal that he can go to and where this construction is and where this construction is. Kind of brings it all together. So I think the timing of an inspector amongst the timing of this new permitting software should kind of go hand in hand. But that's just my opinion, so.
I absolutely agree. And we have established good relationships with the auditor's office with adjusting cadastral information, which is another thing that's stipulated to be under the responsible charge of a professional surveyor. So the surveyor in-house at the surveyor's office has worked with the parcel editor in the auditor's office to address certain concerns, and I think that could be something that could be established. And then we have equipment, you know, so as long as we feel real comfortable even being able to utilize the equipment that's already part of the county's inventory could be a possible route. I think there's a lot of ways that this could work in a cohesive way, but you're absolutely right. It's not really anything that's super favored amongst the county is to have a shared employee, but this might be a place that would really benefit from, that we would really benefit from.
I was also wondering if, and I don't know a lot about construction, are certain points reached in construction where you must get a permit before you can continue on?
The permitting process, I'm going to reference like a site development subdivision. They would take it through all the planning approvals, and planning would issue a grading permit. That would allow them within that section to start grading, and they can put storm sewers in, utilities in, and streets, curbs, walks, all landscaping should all be put in, can all be put in, subject to bonding and that sort of stuff.
I guess what I was thinking of a bit more is that it sounds to me people don't do what they say they're going to do, what they've been told to do. So maybe it would help to introduce more levels of permitting so that, you know, you could get a permit for your initial drainage plan and siting or whatever, and that would have to get inspected. And then when you do your plat and, you know, actually put in a foundation or whatever, then another inspection would have to occur, and with a permit with each of those. Maybe even.
I think that permitting software can help you with that. And I don't know that you would have to take the step, and I'm just thinking out loud off the spot here. I don't know that you'd have to take the step of doing a permit for each of those activities, but I think it's a method that you could set up that if you're at this point, then you can't go to that next step without an inspection. And then it gets put into that permitting software for that next step of whether it's building or planning or stormwater. And you're right, that's what happened over the years is developers did not develop things that they should have. And I mean, we ran into that in the last 2 years, and we were just lucky that we caught it. But there wasn't somebody out there at that stage of that process to make sure that it was put in. I mean, they ended up having to take it back out, but at their expense, but you want to save them from doing that also. So I think you can do it at different levels of inspections at different times during their building process.
I'd like to add a little bit to that too. In a site, just as the logical points of inspection for a building, the inspector would go out there and inspect mass grading. He would then go back when they're starting to put utilities in, make sure the utilities are bedded properly. when they get into the roads, he'd make sure that he would do another inspection, make sure the sub-base for the road or subgrade for the road is compacted properly. Then you get the asphalt laid, he makes sure, monitors that. So there are steps, logical steps that make sense.
That's kind of what I thought, and it just strikes me that if we had a stricter permitting process and inspections going with it, then probably more and more bad things would get caught, and the development community in general might just kind of get the notion that it would be a good idea to do what they say they're going to do, and it'll save them a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So,
Connie has me scheduled to speak at the contractors workshop in February, and I'm guessing that this topic's going to be my job to talk to them about it.
it'll be interesting to hear about it.
So I'm in complete support of moving forward. I think the position's really needed. I knew I threw a lot out, and if you have a need that it just can only be facilitated with, one person, and that's kind of, you need that one person just to kind of address your needs. I understand. If there's a way to kind of work amongst departments, that would be great. So, thank you.
We know we threw a lot out, and I'm not sitting here saying we're raising a fee tomorrow, and I'm not sitting here saying we're gonna go bond for $10 million tomorrow either, but it's options that we have to look at. If we want stormwater to succeed and make progress and work on the long-range plan with all those projects, because I think there was 50 on there, we've only tackled 4 here, and we haven't even got to a construction of it. So we haven't even hit a large portion of what's out there, but you have to start somewhere, and just bringing in $1 million a year, it's not going to get you very far. So we're just trying to throw out different things for all of you to think about, and if there's other things you guys think about and there's other options, different avenues that you know of, then we're more than welcome to listen. We've looked into grant possibilities. Doesn't at this point seem that any of the projects fit a grant application at this point, but so we're looking at all avenues. So we know we threw a lot out there this month and the last month, but I just think we're at a point that if you want to see construction of a lot of these big projects, then we have to find an avenue to be able to construct them.
I should imagine if we have much more flooding like we had last spring, there'll be quite a bit of public support. Yeah, I think the public is likely to become pretty supportive of it. So, and I think it's almost time when I have to leave. Do you all have anything
I think
further?
we covered C and D. Honestly, I think we kind of merged that into one
Oh, yes,
conversation.
yeah, I
so-
think we did. That's what I was looking at, was that we pretty much covered our final items, so.
Should we ask the no public if there is a public
Yeah,
comment?
oh, yes. Would you like to comment on any of that? Okay, thank you. And then I will adjourn our meeting.
Thank you.